level grit, next level grind. Tune in, come and watch next level shine. Military science, next level tech, no telling how deep the next level get. Next level grit, it's next level's time. Next level K9s, putting in that grind. Texas finest, blessed by the highest. Like and subscribe, next level going live.
Most importantly, I can't have volunteers at my facility because I have military working dogs and police canines that the military could no longer work with, that the police officers gave up on because they could no longer do it. So that means I just can't have people off the street come up there and work for us. You have to be experienced. Both people I have up there working with me, 2 of us have over 30 years and 1 of us have over 20 years.
For those people who may not know who you are, and in the canine world, I can't imagine there being anybody who doesn't know who you are. But give us a background on who Jason Johnson is, and maybe a little bit of background on Project Canine Hero as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I from the small town of Hadley, Michigan. I graduated in 1993. I wanted to be a soldier my entire life. My grandfathers were soldiers, Marine. One was a Marine in Korean War. The other was a volunteer for World War II. Was a Navy Seabee, served in Guam. And hearing their stories growing up, I knew I wanted to serve. And probably since I was a little kid. So, I joined the Army, well before I graduated high school with the intent to become a military police officer, which is what I did. I wanted to get in law enforcement. And when I grew up in Michigan, outside the Detroit area, small town, there wasn't any canine units. My town didn't have a canine unit. My sheriff's department didn't. I didn't even know, what about the profession really was all about, in the 90s when I graduated high school. But when I got in the Army and my first duty station was overseas in Germany, Wiesbaden, Mainz, I really started learning more about the military working dog program, canine as a profession. And I really, since that time, really wanted to focus my entire career on becoming a canine handler and eventually a canine trainer and beyond. So I got out of the Army in 1998. I really wanted to be a police canine handler. I worked really hard up in Washington State. I was in Tacoma, town of Puyallup, Washington, for those who know the area, Puyallup Police outside Fort Lewis. And I was in Yakima, Washington. And I was a police canine handler there. I also was on the SWAT team, defensive tactics, training officer, honor guard. And had my dog Flash. Went through a program with Washington State Patrol. Also, it was kind of regulated by the Border Patrol, so the same program. My instructor was Ricky Radassa. For those who know, Ricky was Deputy Chief of Border Patrol Canine at the time, and learned a lot about training dogs at a still fairly young age. And really worked hard to get my first instructor certification, official, abilities with the Washington State Police Canine Association back then. Some of the organizations weren't that far up in the Northwest at the time. So once I got that, I was probably about 33 years old, and I kind of did everything I wanted to do in law enforcement. At 33, I spent 5 years in the military, 10 in the police, canine handler, canine trainer. My dog Flash, we worked on 2, drug task force. We did interdiction, with the SWAT team and everything. I was doing everything I wanted to do, but I really didn't have a place to go from there. I really didn't have anything beyond that at that level. So I started my own company in 2005 called Canine Solutions Northwest, now Canine Solutions International. And I was finishing my college degree. I eventually got my bachelor's, and I was on to my master's from Bellevue University in security management. And with these contracts, what I learned is now people are doing a lot more nowadays. I was way ahead of the time back then in 2005, but I was using private dogs to do, explosive sweeps, gun sweeps, narcotic sweeps at all the school districts and other buildings within my area. Not my police dog, but I had 5 other private dogs that we had trained up and we were using with other off-duty canine handlers. And I had about 8 contracts at that time. And then I got the call for the ability to take on what I thought was the largest canine contract in the world, not take on, but be a part of. That was with Blackwater. And went and took a month off of leave from work because you don't want to quit your perfectly good canine and SWAT job. But I took a month off to work, went to Moyock, North Carolina, 21 days of vetting for the PSS, which is Protective Security Specialist. Went through the school with all the Rangers, SF guys, and the SEALs, and all the Tier 1 guys. And my background's military police and police SWAT SWAT canine, right? So I don't have the same background as them, but I was able to pass that, and then went on a week of canine vetting, did very well there, and went on to Iraq. Took over the kennel master who left there, Chuck Medford, pretty legendary guy in Blackwater Canine. Went to Al Hilla, did missions all across Iraq for the State Department, some with the CIA and some other government agencies. We were doing protective details for the most part, all mobile for the most part. Pretty much advanced teams going out doing sweeps where they're either going to have meetings or high level venues. For example, I did the elections in 2008 in Iraq. I think I did 27 polling stations in 3 days with State Department officials, things like that. For those who know the history of contracting, Triple Canopy came in that year in 2009, the year after, and they took over that contract. We kept it down in Hilla for a little bit to about August, and we kept the air contract. And I was transferred over. I was a kennel master at the time there. I was actually the last Blackwater canine person in the country that still worked for the company. And I went over to Afghanistan in the fall of '09. I did the elections there. I worked for Ambassador Kyle Eikenberry. I was on the ambassador's detail. So I did meetings between the ambassador. We had General Stanley McChrystal there at the time. Everybody from, if the U.S. president came while I was there, Secretary of State was there. We did every security detail sweep from that level on down. And also did the elections there in '09, the Afghan elections between President Karzai and Abdullah. Used to go to his house every day and sweep his residence for explosives before he even left it. And it was a challenging job, but during that time, I always knew contracting would probably end. And while at that time I might have been one of the higher paid canine handlers in the world, I knew that that was a temporary solution for me. I finished my master's degree in security management, and I got the call from ATF, Front Royal, Virginia. Many people are familiar with that facility, the National Canine Training Center. And I got a job there, accepted a job as a canine trainer and a course developer. And so I started there in February of 10. And that really took me on a different path of training that it's kind of like Lackland. If you're either at Lackland or a place like that, you really see a lot of numbers. So not only did we train the special agents with ATF, Marshals, FBI, NGA, CIA, stuff like that, we had the anti-terrorism assistance program with 21 countries overseas. And then during that time, for those who remember, a lot of people might be listening, might have been one of my former students in Yuma or Creech Air Force Base. We had the homemade explosive course for the pre-deployment course. I taught that course in Yuma from 2010 to 15, like on a weekend basis. I think I've been there about 120 times in my life. And we did everything from the IDD program, the SSD program, the TED program, all branches of the military, minus your special operations and beyond. So I think during that time, we saw somewhere between around 1,800 dogs come through that program that we were able to imprint on HME and run through a validation course. So a lot of heat casualties during that time. If I never go back to Yuma, I'll be all right. I got a bunch of awards for it. It was cool, and I'll run into people nowadays that who I might have had for a few days there doing that. So it was great. But we also lost a lot of people. Some of the handlers that you might have heard of passing away overseas in the line of duty were definitely my students. A couple come to mind, like Chris Diaz from United States Marine Corps. Chris, and he passed away trying to save another Marine. Over the years, his dog Dino survived it. He full circle became a member of Project Canine Hero when his parents got him. So, it was a great job. But after about 5.5 years of that, at the end, I was teaching the C class. Are you familiar with the C class? The C class. Yeah. So that's the off leash course. That's going to be the search. It's called Seek. It's the it's like it's called Seek for a reason, but it really means the Search Evidence Enhanced Canine course. So that course is to, if you ever heard the IDD program, where we use the off leash dogs with the Marine Corps and their infantry. This was a program where we could send explosive dogs off leash up to 200 to 300 yards off commands. And I started as an assistant instructor in that. I helped write the SOPs and protocols. And when I left ATF, I was the lead instructor in that. and I was teaching special agents how to work their canines at 200 to 300 yards out. And we're at that time only one doing it.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, I have interviewed plenty of guys who specialize in working military dogs at the highest level. Obviously, lots of police officers at the highest level, and guys at the federal side. I don't know anybody with the resume that you have. It seems like you have really done things at the highest level on all three of those things. I mean, I know you're not going to brag on yourself. It's actually really cool because talk about some of those experiences. Did a lot of the
Yeah.
military stuff bleed over to the police stuff and vice versa?
Well, for sure. Like when I was teaching, the HME course in Yuma, I was not that far out of Iraq and Afghanistan working for Blackwater. And for those who know what kind of mission we had at Blackwater, I wasn't a static security guard. I was a mobile. I was on the mission. So that would entail me getting out of a vehicle with sometimes a group of guys and sometimes with one other person and searching a village or certain all by myself, and these are the things we were asking some of our students to do, like when I was in Yuma and Creech, and we had roadside bombs and we had buried aids, and we were looking for different aspects of explosives like calcium ammonium nitrate or potassium ammonium nitrate, and specifically TATP, HMTD, right? Stuff that sometimes, that's the level of training we were teaching there. So I felt very qualified, when I was teaching those classes in Yuma to these guys, that I wasn't just someone who, you know, got some canine training certificate somewhere else, and here I was teaching them. The lowest rank I was in the government was a GS-13. So, I felt of the well over 1,000 students that I've had, I felt like I've always given them something. And I've run into these guys over the years, you know how it is, and it's been great to maintain that level of friendships. And when I got to, so what happened with ATF is in 15, I wanted to go back operational. I felt being an instructor is like just being a drill sergeant. They're just going to start you on one day, you're going to graduate another, they're going to get you another class, and you just keep going. And I felt that was getting me a little stale. So I went over to Homeland Security, TSA program, passenger screening program to be specific. My position there, field canine coordinator. They don't have those jobs anymore, but probably some people listening have heard of it or been one. And it was a great job. It was kind of a little bit program management. I did red team assessments, I helped with certifications, did explosive inventories, and managed the teams that I had assigned to me in the central region. And that was awesome because at times, my bosses, I was a regional coordinator. I think we had 337 teams in that region. I can tell you, I was the acting regional coordinator during the 2016 RNC. I think we had about 117 teams working for us at that time. When Trump first was running down there in Cleveland. So, real world threats. We had a lot of different things. And I really enjoyed getting out of the training environment and back into an environment where if the people I'm working with don't do their job right, people could die. In the training environment, everything was controlled. There was no real life, aspect to it, because up until that point, being military police and the police SWAT guy and canine guy and being in Blackwater, everything in my life had been, decision making, life and death type stuff. Well, in training, it just didn't exist. And so I was happy to get back into that. But what really happened is when I got that job at Homeland Security and became at the level I was, people would come to me, handlers would come to me and say, Jason, I went to the vet, and they say, my dog, I talked to the rear ends kind of going out and they think it's time to retire. And I was literally the person in the government that would have you sign a piece of paper to retire your dog, and we would give it to you. I'm not saying we wouldn't give it to you, but we'd give you your dog. But I would also take it out of our system of financial responsibility for the government. So what I learned then was we would work these dogs right up to the point where they could no longer do their job. And then as a government, we said, well, we're going to retire and it's all on you. And that's what really started pushing me towards the idea of Project Canine Hero. I wanted to start an organization that was going to be there for the handlers. And you got to imagine this time I'm probably around 2,200 students or teams that I've worked with in my life. And I wanted to be there as an organization to help them because I knew the government wasn't going to do it. We know the military is not going to do it. And for the majority of your state and local agencies, they don't have anything in place. There's a few out there, but it's probably less than 3%. So I wanted to start something that was going to make a difference. While I was still in the government in 2016, I took $500 in my pocket. I started a nonprofit. Didn't know a lot about it. Obviously, I had a lot of training, education experience. You know, I had my master's degree, but I never ran a nonprofit. You know, I've ran businesses. You know, I had Canine Solutions Northwest, and you know, since that day, we've actually raised over $25 million, which is a crazy number to me. I could tell you right now, in 2016, when I was still in the government, taking the $500 in my pocket to start the thing and writing that check when we didn't have any money, I didn't even have program members or anything yet, and raising that much money, and then how many hundreds of dogs we've taken care of since then. And we can get back into Project Canine Hero, but that's kind of the path up until about 2016. I quit my government job in January 17 to do this full time, but you know, that's kind of the path from 93 to 17 that kind of led me to where I'm at today.
Well, I definitely want to ask a couple questions because I want to get into the Project K9 Hero stuff because it's amazing. And it's just opened up a can of worms in so many ways. But there have been some recent things that have happened in the U.S. Terrorist attacks, you may say, in New Orleans most recently. I know there was some debate whether the Tesla that exploded in Las Vegas was connected to that. But let's stick to the New Orleans one because that we absolutely know was essentially a terrorist attack. What were your feelings about that? And did you know anybody on the ground?
Yeah, actually, you know, I have students all over the nation. You know, at one time with the U.S. Marshals, they had 17 dogs. I had trained every one of them. You know, same with the ATF. I was training ATF agents. We have them almost every city. I know the teams there. State and local, same thing. So pretty much no matter the city, I will have contacts or someone I've worked with or trained with or anything. So, you know, in my degrees in security management and anti-terrorism, I I I feel strongly that canine is the largest deterrent to a terrorist attack at all levels, even for weapons. Also feel strongly with my master's in security management and working all the federal agencies I did. I also feel that we don't use them enough. I feel that it's a visual deterrent. I mean, if we could put one on every corner, I would. You know, with a uniform, you know, whether it be officer, security, you know, at any level. But that canine is a strong deterrent, and I see it all over the world. And everyone knows it. You feel it if you walk in the airport and you were going to walk through and see one. I mean, we're canine guys. We even feel that, right? We even get probably a little nervous, and we know pretty much what there is to know about it. But I just feel it's so underused, and we can talk about that a little more. But I've certainly, I mean, back when I was still in the government, I was trying to get dogs into stadiums with my company. I was before my time then too, before it even really took off on the private side, because it was kind of part of my school program, like in the late 2008 9 era and into 10. And I met some resistance with it. You know, they wanted to use local police when they could, but even though they're not always available, and I was trying to really show them that you cannot have enough canine security, and you can't, even at these big venues. I mean, you know, there's times when I've been in the government, we've managed things the size of the Super Bowl, and you know, we'll have 120 dogs there, and that's a good number. But you can't send 120 dogs to every event, right? So my point is, I just feel they're underutilized, and I feel that you know, we've done studies when I was in the government with the Pentagon and JIDO, which is the Joint ID Defeat Organization out in Fort Irwin. Well, there's been all kinds of studies and millions of dollars put into detecting explosives, but it comes down to this: nothing is more capable than a well-trained canine and his partner, especially a certified one. They outbeat all the robots. They outbeat all the machines, maintenance, even the cost. Um, and then it's the visual deterrent, you know, of that German Shepherd, of that Malinois, that Dutch Shepherd, even the lab, doesn't matter. You know, they're still all there. So that's my personal take on it.
I remember a couple years ago there was some kind of article that came out about the Pentagon spending an ungodly amount of money on some type of robot that could detect explosives, and I think they did the cost analysis, and it was something ridiculous
Yeah,
in
it
the
was.
several millions of dollars. Are you
It
familiar
was.
with that program? You know what I'm talking
I,
about?
I am at. Yeah, I was. I wasn't involved in the study, but I've been involved in other suicide bomber initiatives and things with the government when I was in there. And again, all we've learned every time is canine's the best tool by far, cheapest and most effective.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So let's switch gears for a second. And Project K9 Hero, that's how I knew you first. And
Right.
I'm sure a lot of our audience probably feels the same way. They knew of you
Right.
through that 501c3 and all the amazing things you do. I would venture to say it's probably the largest 501c3 doing what you're doing in that space. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's definitely some other ones out there. I mean, you know, we did 5.8 million last year. We're taking in new dogs every day. There's other ones out there, but what makes us different and why I would say the largest in our space is because we have the Rehabilitation Rehoming Center. Not only are we paying bills for the dogs in our program, but we have the 177 acres in Tennessee that's already paid for. We're building a very comprehensive facility out there to help dogs who are going to be euthanized otherwise. And you know, it's just a place where they can go and make sure they have a home that they so rightly deserve. But having that said, one of the things I feel strongly why I can agree with you on that is that we have a 100% Charity Navigator rating. So if you Google Project Canine Hero and you'll see Charity Navigator, the 100% rating is huge. I feel, as far as I know, we're the only nonprofit even close to the canine space that has that. But definitely for what we do, and only 0.1% of organizations worldwide have a 100% rating. I've actually had to work really hard over the last 7 years to get that, very hard. And then we also do 90% program services for our dogs, which is only 5% in admin fees and 5% in fundraising. So when you factor all those things and the assets we have, and just our global reach, we have dogs in our program from Canada that I've taken in from Vancouver PD. I've helped 3 other countries start a similar organization to this. So, you know, it's subjective to say it's the largest in the world, probably, but based on the things that I just said, I know we're at least the most transparent, and for those reasons, maybe the most well known.
So one of the things that we've started this year was our 501c3, and our mission for us was essentially to find missing children, help find human remains, and also starting a program in which we can identify DNA in crime scenes with dogs to help with that analysis. What advice do you have for someone like me who's just starting their 501c3, who wants to give back to the community? What are some of the downfalls of having a 501c3, some of the mistakes that you made during the time?
Yeah, I think the first thing you got to do is you got to run it like a business, right? So I'll hear people all the time, well, I volunteer for a nonprofit where nobody gets paid and they're all volunteers. And I think that's great. But I also think there'll always be the size that they are. So I'm holding up my magazine. We have our first magazine, Unleash magazine, and very proud of that. You know, so we have our annual report. And, you know, when you have all volunteers, you're not going to have something like a magazine. You're not going to have the apparel like we have. You're not going to have the calendar. You're not going to have the marketing outreach. But most importantly, I can't have volunteers at my facility because I have military working dogs and police canines that the military could no longer work with, that the police officers gave up on because they can no longer do it. So that means I just can't have people off the street come up there and work for us. I mean, you have to be experienced. Both people I have up there working with me, 2 of us have over 30 years and one of us have over 20 years. So, you know, it's kind of to the thing that you got to treat it like a business. If you don't treat it like a business, you're always going to be that size. And I'll ask people who state they work for the all, volunteer nonprofit, and they'll make, they'll pull in 50,000 a year, 40,000 a year. But we did 5.8 million last year, and we did 4.4 million the year before that, and 4.3 million the year before that. And that just doesn't happen with a volunteer staff. So treat it like a business. Keep in mind of your program services. We're at 90. We only got 5% admin. So we have a very small staff, but very strong staff. That's what people are going to look at the most. Familiarize yourself with all nonprofit rules, laws, and regulations. I own 9 other businesses so it's difficult for me. Firearms company, my canine company, I have a rock quarry out there by my plate. You know what I mean? I have all these other things, so I have to keep. You got to keep all these things separate, but it's doable. It's doable with the right education. I have a great CPA lawyer. I suggest you have one of those. I run. We're trying to work on a feature film right now about one of our dogs that's in our program that we saved his life, and working on that as a nonprofit. You know, I was just on the phone with them for about an hour yesterday trying to figure out how can Project Canine Hero be involved and
Mm-hmm.
still get the recognition as a nonprofit, right? And there's ways to do it, but you got to go about the legal way, right? And so all of those things come into play, and took me years to really take a grasp on it, but I do feel highly qualified to educate others on the best practices of the nonprofit world.
Oh, heck yeah. So let me run a scenario by you, and you let me know if this is a situation where Project Canine Hero could help. We have a retired police dog who has now, with the handler, of course, that police department has released the liability and all of the financial responsibility onto that handler. That dog, thankfully, has not had any real crazy medical expenses. But in that case, what could Project Canine Hero do for that specific team?
Yeah, so what qualifies for Project Canine Hero? And we should go into the mission real quick because we haven't talked about that. So
Yeah.
as a 501c3, our mission is to take care of retired police canines and military working dogs who have significant medical issues. We help with their medical care, their bills, prescription food, and end of duty services, as well as the rehabilitation and rehoming. So I think one thing that's made us successful is we're very narrow. We're not helping with a vest, not helping with a Narcan kit, not helping with training. It's just retired dogs. So in the case you gave me is a retired police canine, commissioned law enforcement, and my eligibility is, it's a little different. I'll do search and rescue. If they've worked with law enforcement in some form or fashion, I mean, TSA qualifies for us. Some will say they're not law enforcement, but they work at Homeland Security, they qualify. Search and rescue dogs who might, be volunteer with the fire department or something in that nature, they'll qualify. But, private security, they don't qualify, right? So there's a fine line. But if they're affiliated with some type of state, local, or federal entity, in canine, pretty much they'll qualify for our organization. So this dog qualifies. On our website at projectcaninehero.org, at the bottom of the footer, there's applications for medical services, adoptions, or rehab rehoming. And so they can fill out the medical application. And I will say we have over 800 pending applications right now for services to get into this program.
Wow.
We base those on financial burden and special needs, right? So a financial burden is, hey, I'm still serving, the surgery is going to be, maybe it's an ACL tear, it's going to be $3,400. My wife's pregnant. I got 2 kids. I only can work one job. These are the situations. I don't have the money. And these are what we look at and I personally look at every application when we put in that one new hero week. So we do take in 50 new heroes a year, 52 a year, one a week. And I would tell you every 7 days we're committing, because on average over the lifetime of a dog, and we might have in the program for 1 year or 6 years, depending if it's 8, it's 9, it's 13, whatever. I would say on average we spend $25,000 per dog. So every 7 days we're committing to a new $25,000. Because people would say, well, you guys are doing so good financially. Why don't you just take on more dogs? Well, as of today, we have 328 lifetime dogs. 142 are alive. If all 142 dogs went to the emergency vet today, we would simply be out of money like that.
Mm-hmm.
We've committed to taking care of them for life. That's playing the odds. But it's nothing to have 7 or 8 dogs in the ER a day for us. There's days we can spend $25,000 here in medical bills at this organization. So we have to work extremely hard to keep that high level of standard. And I think that's what does set us apart, that we can maintain that through our hard work and our network. But he would apply. We got to triage the list, right? On my notes right now, I have over 60 dogs in a 1 through 60 list on who's coming in the program next. And that list changes not by the day, but by the hour. And it's probably one of the hardest things that I have to do. But again, based on my background, based on what I've done in my life, I feel qualified to make those decisions. And as the leader of this organization and the founder, I'm looking for what dog can I help the most. And we know the situations, right? We know what handlers are in dire need. Some of it's where you work, where you live. Bills are different in each area, geographically, here in the United States. So I try to do my best to make it diverse. We're in all states but two right now. We just Vermont and New Hampshire, the only two places we don't have dogs. It's only because we haven't had an application from there. And then we got dogs at every branch of the military, and I know you've seen them. Our last two came in from Navy SEALs, Team 3, and we've had a couple from Team 3 come in, Team 5 and Team 7 recently. And these guys are out there putting their life on the line, through their training, all the things we ask them to do. And then it's like a special operations soldier, right? All that wear and tear on the body as they get older is going to catch up to them. We know it's going to catch up to them. And we know the government's not going to be there to help them. And how is someone still serving in special operations? They can't go get a second job. Maybe their wife stays at home with their kids. Maybe their kids are special needs. There's a lot of things that we don't disclose out there, but there's a lot of things I do see in applications. And that's why we're able to make these decisions and help as many as we can. So this situation be able to apply if they met that criteria where we felt the right financial burden and special needs was there. Obviously we get them high up on the list and try to help them as soon as we can.
It's an crazy important mission, and you saw it from the military side and the federal side, and I hear it everywhere I go. What are we doing with these retired dogs? So it's super cool to know that you have been blessed with an opportunity not only to start something, but the magnitude of it is absolutely insane. And man, I'm just so proud to know you and what you're doing with that program, because I know how many people that affects in such a positive way. So I didn't thank you for your service before, but as an umbrella, thanks for everything you're doing, dude, because it's pretty awesome. I do want to switch gears and talk about the World Police and Fire Games. Did I say that correctly?
You sure did. Yep.
Okay. So that's something that was only introduced to me in the late 90s, only because two of the guys that I respect and I would say are my mentors got an opportunity to compete. But tell us what the World Police and Fire Games are, maybe a little history and how you got involved with them.
Yeah, so it's a competition where law enforcement and firefighters can come together from all over the world. They have sometimes up to 10,000 competitors. It happens every 2 years in cities all over. And during there, they've got a lot of different events. It could be boxing, shooting, judo, everything. This year they've added axe throwing. There's team sports, there's swimming, there's individual sports, weightlifting, all these things. They really wanted to bring back the canine sports, and I was fortunate to be contacted to become the director or the coordinator of the canine sports. I brought to him the canine biathlon, which is something we've been involved with before, and I wanted to take that to a level where we were having our police canines actually competing in the canine biathlon. So when I pitched the idea of the canine biathlon to them, they really loved it. And that's a 5K course where you and your partner go out and you run different obstacles. Maybe it's an A-frame, maybe it's a tunnel, maybe it's a water thing. Think of it as a Spartan race or a mud run with your canine partner, designed for your canine safety as well. But you do together, timed, as a team. And so they love that idea. And so that went through really good. And then they started asking me if I could also reintroduce the canine sports as far as the detection games. And they had in the past patrol and things like that. But I felt for just logistically, it's hard to set up. It looked like a kind of like an old USPCA, rules. They had the blinds and they had these things, and I was like, that's really hard to set up and judge. I said, let me make it simple. Let me rewrite the rules and come up with a program for detection only. Because these people are going to come run the biathlon. They may be dual purpose, but most of them are going to be either narcotics or explosives. Then we can get them involved in biathlon, and we can do either narcotics detection or explosive detection. That's going to encompass the majority of our teams, right? We do have teams out there who are straight just tactical canines, but that's not the majority of our police canines in the United States. So they were like, that's great. And so obviously they knew my background. They gave me a green light to kind of run with everything. So I wrote all the rules for the Canine Biathlon. And again, that's going to be taking place this year in Birmingham on, that's going to be Friday on the June 28th. And then the next day, we're going to have the explosive detection on Saturday, June 29th. And then on Sunday, we're going to have the narcotics detection on the 30th. And what I really like about it, I was given just the leeway to write it how I wanted to. And what I really wanted to do, because all my years of being different certification officials in the government and in police canine, I wanted to take all subjectiveness out of it. I didn't want it to be where there was a score, where there was a judge that gave you a number, because I feel that that's not always fair. You know, there's always biases in there, and we can't take them out, whether it's me, you, or anybody else. Whether they don't like that breed of dog, they don't like that agency, they don't like that person, whatever the case may be. I wanted to eliminate all that from the entire competition, which was in before, and which is what I did. So when you come to the, let's say you're going to run, and my idea of having the 3 days in a row like that is you can come down on like Thursday, you can run the biathlon with your dog, which is the 5K race. We'll get you a time. The next day, you can either do the explosive if you're, explosive detection handler, or you can wait a day and have a day off and do the narcotics. And we've got the venues all set up right outside Birmingham, and the rules are going to be great. The rules are going to be where it's kind of the best time wins, right? So I have four areas set up in each. And we're doing it at a huge high school that has huge diversity, parking lot for cars, and in the old rules, there were 6 cars. I moved it to 20 to 25. I didn't like 6. I wanted a challenge. I moved, we've got open area, but the open area can be, at least a 50-50, but it doesn't need to be a football field. It can be a theater. It can include lockers. It can be the band room. It can be an auditorium. There's all kinds of things we can do with the open area. I want to make it challenging. There is, parcels, which we can do in various, ways there. And then there's luggage. And so there's also ways for me to set up now that we can have blank areas. I've changed all the aids where I've seen a lot of government certifications and other private entity certifications where you kind of know how many aids are going to be. Well, in this one, you'll have no idea. You can have zero in all areas. You can have 0 aids in all areas, 0 to how many ever, right? So there's no way for them to gauge, oh, there's going to be 12 aids and I know I found 11, or I've found them all, right? Because I've seen that in certifications and handlers game the system. And so what you're going to do in this one, you're not going to know if you got 0 or you got 1. But the evaluators, they're just going to be there to start the clock and stop the clock. And so you're going to be timed on every area, start to finish. The timing won't even stop when you reward your dog. If you want to reward your dog, that's fine. But because a lot of people like to stop and talk about it and take a break. None of that. You can reward your dog, but you're going to have to get it back and go back to work if you want a good time. For every false indication, there's going to be a minute penalty. So if you go through and try to go as fast as you can, it's going to be a minute penalty. It's going to add on the time. So you're going to go through these 4 areas, start to finish. The evaluator is going to start the time, stop the time. The only indication they're going to give you is a yes or no, and you have to verbally declare an area being hot. I'm going to be able to do it. You can do a hand above if you want to do a hand above your head. That way you want to do a nonverbal, or you're going to have to verbally say hot. You're only going to get a yes or no. We're going to try to set it up as evaluators so there shouldn't be a not at source, because I know that's probably the only subjective thing that can come into it. Using the wind, and search patterns, I'll do my best to make sure that doesn't happen. If it does, we'll work around it. But my goal is to set it up so that's just not possible or shouldn't be happening. That way you're going to know you get your yes or no. And so you're going to go through your 4 areas. So the winner of both detection competitions, as they go through in their respective fields, is going to be the person with the most amount of fines with the best time. So let's say there's 12 aids. So 12 out of 12 in 29 minutes, 7 seconds, right? If someone had 11 out of 12, but a lesser time, they will not be the winner. It'll be the person with the most fines and the less amount of time. So let's say we have a blank. Let's say we do vehicles blank, 25 blank vehicles. I feel it's going to be I feel you're going to be you're going to have to be a very good team to go out there, search all 25 vehicles, evaluate your win, evaluate your search pattern, kick it off, search it, call it clear on your own, and we'll stop that time. You're going to have to be very good because we know what happens, right? They're probably going to go back. They're going to search a few more cars. They're going to think they missed something. They'll get a false or two, possibly, right? And that'll add on the time, right? So to win, I feel that you're going to have to be a very, very well-rounded K9 team. And there's no judging. There's no points. You just have to go out and perform. And that's the way I wrote all the rules. And that's why I really love how it's set up.
Man, that sounds awesome. I love that you're taking the bias that could go in to some of these certifications. Even there's some bias. You and I spoke offline about some of the USPCA stuff. It's not that it's inherently bad or anything, but there's definitely some bias there and subjectiveness. And it sounds like you've done your absolute best to take as much subjectiveness out of the evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely. The evaluators should be stone cold faced nothing. And when you leave the area, you won't know if you found everything, if you missed anything. You won't know. It's just going to be a stop the clock and on to your next one. So you couldn't even tell. You might, even if they were trying to be collusion, which you shouldn't because you're competing against the others. But you won't even know until the end how you did.
So who qualifies to actually participate, and how do they go about the process of going forward if they want?
So on our page, I've been posting on our Project K9 Hero pages. I've posted in some of the law enforcement K9 training groups, but we have a flyer out for the games, the biathlon, the detection, and both the narcotics explosive detection, and basically there's an eligibility link on there, and the eligibility link is a little bit old school, and I'm actually working with the board right now, being kind of the new guy, in this program. I'm working with the board to change that. So just giving you an example, one of the excluded groups were military police. And I said, look, and I'm a former military police. I'm like, military police officers are the same as other police officers. They have a commission. They're federally, they can go on post, make arrests, they carry a gun, they drive a car. I don't understand how you guys think they're not law enforcement. And there's 1,600 military working dog teams in the nation, right? And I'll agree, okay, our special operations, our Rangers, SEALs, SF, they're not law enforcement. So I can agree they may not qualify. But your Army MPs, your Marines, your Navy, Master at Arms, your security forces, all those people should qualify. So they basically, recently said, Jason, write it up and get it to the board. So I went into the DoD post-certification standards. I went into all the training they get. I showed how their jurisdiction is the post or the base, just like your jurisdiction might be a city. And that's where they have the jurisdiction. And why they don't meet here for about another 2 weeks, I feel strongly that they're going to hopefully make the change in my favor. And we're going to be able to invite military working dog teams who also are in the police category to come out and compete. And I think they belong there and they deserve. The other group that I'm fighting to get in there is TSA. And I'll be the first to say they're not commissioned law enforcement. We know that. However, they do serve in a role of law enforcement, security. They work with Homeland Security at our airports. And when we set up that program, and I remember, well, after 9/11, they didn't want them to be armed. They're working right there at the checkpoints and things. And, they're paying attention to their dog. Actually being armed would be a little dangerous for them as close as they have to work around the people trying to manage their dog and the crowd. So I get that. But being a former government, person who's used them in presidential inaugurations, national conventions, we use them the same way we use any other police K9 team in the world. Their certifications are just as high as theirs. We use them in that capacity. So I feel that they belong as well. Some people might argue with that, but we have 1,300 teams, within that program. And I feel they should be invited because my goal as the coordinator running these events is to have as much success as possible. I want to see as many teams out there as we can get, right? And all that actually is going to come back and benefit Project K9 Hero. I partnered with the World Police and Fire Games, and we're going to get a percentage of all that back to our organization, which was the main reason why I took the K9 biathlon we had there and then eventually took on both detection sports.
That's awesome. If there are teams out there that want to move forward, what advice do you have to them for them in order to prepare for something like this? Maybe they've never competed ever, What are some of the things they should be prepared to do?
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't touch exactly. I just touched on the two that weren't involved. So let's just go back. All commissioned police, state, local, federal, right? And on that eligibility, they got all the from your tribal to your corrections to all the different things, and then they have um, uh, different levels. I've had a few fighters say, "Hey, I'm an explosive dog handler at this agency, but I went through the, most of our firefighters are also commissioned in law enforcement. So they're eligible as well. If they've attended a peace officer training or something like that, they're eligible. So, getting that, but back to the advice, I think that, you got to vary your search times, right? You gotta be doing searches that might go quick in a minute or two, and long problems that might be 20, 25 minutes. Prepared to do 25 minutes blank. You know what I mean? And know what your dog's going to be like if you do 25 minutes blank. Prepared to be challenged on all odors. Being an ATF, I became somewhat an expert on odor contamination, odor storage, transportation, how to properly handle it. Unfortunately, I see a lot of agencies out there, they don't know where they get their orders from. They think they're good on C4 or RDX because they have C4, but they don't know where it came from. Maybe that C4 came from a bomb tech's room that was sitting next to NG dynamite for the last 15 years and all that nitroglycerin's in your plastic. RDX is, only 8% and C4 and 92% plasticizer in most cases. So, why they think they're good on something, know the age you're training on. You got to understand the whole concept. I have in the rules, I've listed all the explosives that are going to be in there. And I've given you a link that you can post here, but basically it's on the World Police and Fire Games website under Canine Sports. I have all the rules listed. I have all the odors listed. So if you're worried about an odor, what's going to be in there, it's listed in there if you're not training on that. I don't want to the last thing I want to do as a director of this is make it hard for the odor or for the amount. We're going to put out odors that everyone should know. We're going to put out amount everyone should be able to find. And we're going to put it in a location that if you have a good search pattern, a plan, leash control, footwork, voice tones, body language, you're going to be fine. What's going to make it hard is the ability to clear an area in an amount of time that you need to clear without getting a false response or having the confidence to say it's clear when you feel it's clear. That's the part I wanted to make hard. But the other things, they won't be hard.
On the explosive detection side, is there going to be any peroxide-based explosives there?
Initially, I was planning on it. I've taken TATP and HMT out, and I'll tell you why. It's a logistical thing, right? And not everyone in the nation, and this is an international competition, and we do have teams bring in dogs from overseas. Mm-hmm. So, in all fairness, again, I didn't want that part to be hard. I wanted the actual skills of a canine handler to be hard. You're going to need to know your odors. So I took those out because you know how it is. We'd have to, and I have the contacts within the government to do it and get them there, but I didn't want that to be the challenge. I wanted the rest of it to be the challenge. So I removed them just on the sake of fairness.
I guess that would be the same reason why you wouldn't have fentanyl as one of the narcotics being detected.
We do not. Right? No, we do not. And again, I mean, we took marijuana out too, because not every team in the nation's on marijuana. So you pretty much have cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamines. Again, so, and the odors are going to be prevalent. It's just going to be more of the handling skills. It's more of a handling skills. Obviously, your dog has to be trained on all the odors, but I don't want, what we don't want, because we see this as we do certifications all around the world, and guys like me and you, what we don't want are complaints to like, well, that was such a trace amount, or I never trained on that amount. I have it very clearly in there, the poundage and the types, and we'll stick right to those rules. So if you look at the rules and you're training within those parameters, we will be true to them.
Perfect. So what if, what other aspects about this would you need help with? I know that you're going to need participants. If someone wants to help judge or be an evaluator, first off, is there a need for that? And if so, what are the qualifications?
Yeah, so the qualifications are to be be a certified evaluator in some other nationally recognized organization, whether that be USPCA, NAPWADA, whatever organization, whatever state. If you can give a state certification in your state, if you're able to be at that level, then you have the ability to be an evaluator at our just like any other evaluator. We're pretty much set on the evaluators. We have very diverse. We have leaders from federal government, local police, state, all different levels out there. So I feel confident that with the biathlon, we could use some volunteers because some of the areas we probably want some for safety. Some people viewing the area to make sure if a team goes down or the water breaks or all those things are in place. So we could use some volunteers, and they can reach out to us. Probably the best way is on our website, projectk9hero.org, hit the contact us. We're running all of it there. And I just wanted to say thanks to the World Police and Fire Games for having the trust in me to not only bring the new event in the biathlon, bring the other two events. They let me, and there may be some people mad that we got rid of the patrol aspect, but I'm looking from a logistics standpoint. I mean, we know how easy it is to set up a detection area. I got a huge high school, that's got every venue in it that I need that we can do the detection at. And, it's going to be something that we can manage. And again, I feel the winner of it should be very, very proud because it's not going to come easy. And we hope to have hundreds of teams there, hundreds. For the evaluators, we got enough that they can take hourly breaks, so they should be working 1 hour and then off so they don't out there all day. And for the biathlon, we can run teams off the start every minute. So from the start of the day to the end of the day, we can send them every minute in intervals. So I'm really hoping people go and they take an interest in it. That all that can be found again at projectk9hero.org. You can search the World Police and Fire Games or Birmingham 2025 Fire Games. It's every 2 years. I'm hoping it goes real well. 2027's in Australia. So I hope we'll be doing this again in 2 years and we'll be talking about the games in Australia. But so far working with the executive board of the games and bringing my experiences that I've had in K9 to them, they've been nothing but great with me. And I'm going to do my best to make this as successful as I possibly can. And once again, just so everyone knows, when you register, part of that funding is all going back to Project K9 Hero, which helps pay for those retired medical bills for retired police dogs and military working dogs.
That is awesome, man. What a great way to come full circle with everything. Jason, I know you're a busy man. I know you got a lot of stuff on your plate, so thanks for taking the time to sit down and talk to us today. We will be linking all of the important links in the description of the episode, so it'll be easily accessible. I know you mentioned projectk9hero.org. Is that it? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yep. So we'll continue to funnel everybody over there because it looks like all the information is there. But anything else that you want to close with today? Any other information that you want to leave us with?
I just want to say thanks to everyone that supports us. We have over 250,000 donors worldwide. My staff, who is the day-to-day, the backbone, volunteers, our corporate sponsors. We have over 100 corporate sponsors now. And all this you see, with as much money as we made and all the dogs we've helped. And I plan on taking this to, I feel like every day I get up, I'm just getting started. I feel, we're going to go even beyond, right? We're still working with Congress to help change laws and bills. I'm down there all the time trying to get federal funding for our retired working dogs. It's something that's a life mission of mine. I won't stop until I see it through. But I feel if I'm not out there doing it, who's gonna? And, if you got a business idea out there, if you're listening to this and you're a K9 handler or you're a police officer or soldier, just know that, I was there one day too. And sometimes you got to follow your passion and sometimes you got to take that leap. And it's not always comfortable. It's not always easy, but with hard work and dedication, it can be done. And I'll just say I'm probably one of the most fortunate people in the world to be surrounded by as many people as I am and have as many friends as I do in the industry that support what we do. And, as I always say, these heroes spent their entire life protecting us. So I'm going to spend the rest of my life protecting them.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The man, the myth, the legend, Jason Johnson. Thanks for your time today, brother. We'll definitely be seeing you soon.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
Thanks, bro.